Our first guest wrote an incredibly powerful piece in The Spectator called Reasons Why the 2020 Presidential Election is Deeply Puzzling. His name is Patrick Basham. He is the director of the Democracy Institute, which is a wonderful group, and a professional pollster. And Patrick, it's a pleasure to have you. I would like you to walk through these issues that you found to be deeply puzzling. Go right ahead.
Absolutely. I approached the article. None of us are objective, but we all try to be. We hope we are at least independent-minded. And so how would an independent-minded person assess the quote-unquote outcome, as the media has designated it, of the 2020 presidential election? And I looked at three aspects. First of all, I looked at the quasi-results. And if you look at the results, you see how Donald Trump improved his performance, national performance, over 2016 by almost 20%. No incumbent president has ever lost a re-election bid if he's increased his votes. Obama went down by 3.5 million votes between 2008 and 2012, but still won comfortably. If you look at those results, you see that Donald Trump did very well, even better than 4 years earlier with the white working class. He held his own with women and suburban voters against most of the polling expectations. He did very well with Catholics. He improved his vote amongst Jewish voters. He had the best minority performance for a Republican since Richard Nixon in 1960, doing so well with African Americans and, importantly, with Hispanics. So I sort of suggest this thought experiment. I think if one took 100 well-informed about the American political scene, 100 observers who were sequestered for the actual election night and since, and you gave them the vote breakdown by demographic group, and you saw where Biden and Trump did well or did poorly. You laid out all those numbers, but you omitted the one fact, or shall I say the one assertion, that Biden had won the national popular vote in there and consequently in the respective swing states was going to be the next president. And you gave them all the demographic data, all the exit poll data, and you asked them, so who do you think won the election? My suggestion to your viewers is that 99 at least out of those 100 independent, well-informed observers would say, well, obviously Trump, right? So we know from the vote itself, or the alleged vote, the alleged result, that it is something very strange has happened because the numbers just don't add up. They don't measure up to our polling that was conducted right up to the election and the likes of Richard Barris or the Trafalgar Group, the polls that were the most accurate by some distance. Everything suddenly went very strange in the middle of the night. Now, that could happen. It's just very, very unusual. And if this was an exceptional election, as some people assert, and that's why the numbers seem strange, then you would expect it to have a uniformity to that exceptionalism. So Joe Biden would have increased his support, not just in key precincts, in key cities, in key swing states, and nowhere else, but he would have had a sort of uniform victory. He was the challenger. He has apparently, allegedly, received more votes than any candidate for president in American history. And yet he has done very, very poorly in most of the country, except where it absolutely mattered. Another way of looking at this is to look at what I call the non-polling metrics, the things like party registration trends, how the candidates did in their respective presidential primaries, the number of individual donations, how much enthusiasm each candidate generated in the opinion polls. There are sort of a dozen or more of these metrics. Now, these metrics have a 100% accuracy rate in terms of predicting the winner of the presidential election. Some of them are more recent, like Google searches. Others, obviously, like registration trends, have far more history behind them. In 2016, they all indicated strongly that Donald Trump would win against most of the public polling. That was again the case in 2020. So if we are to accept that Biden won against the trend of all these non-polling metrics, it not only means that one of these metrics was inaccurate this time for the first time ever, it means that each one of these metrics was wrong for the first time and at the same time as all of the others. It is not statistically impossible, but it's statistically implausible. Another way of looking at what happened is to look at how the vote ballots were accumulated and how they were tabulated and counted on election night, and obviously since then. In fact, in places like California, they are still counting. And what you see there is a ridiculous, bizarre number of anomalies. Some of them are statistical, some of them are procedural. You have, for example, a historically low ballot rejection rate for absentee and mail-in ballots. Rejection rates which in the primaries earlier this year were well into the double digits, and which historically have often been very, very high. In these key swing states, or at least in the key swing counties, we're seeing rejection rates of less than 1%, often very close to zero. Now, given the increase in absentee balloting and the lack of experience that most of the new voters and those doing the counting would have with those ballots, it is implausible, to put it politely, that that figure would be as low as it was.